Tracking your macros can be a powerful nutrition tool when it comes to losing weight or gaining muscle, but a lot of people don't do it correctly. Well, in today's video, I'm going to teach you exactly what to avoid so that you can do it properly. Let's get to it. Hi, I'm Aleksa, the climbing dietitian, sports dietitian, and nutrition coach. Before I dive into today's list, remember to click the red subscribe button, okay? Subscribe to my channel. And of course, never forget to ring the bell, okay? So ring that bell so you don't miss any of my videos. So today's topic is one that's a long time coming. Working one-on-one with many individuals using macro tracking, I have a unique perspective when it comes to what people struggle with and what they do well. And therefore I have a clear idea of what people don't do correctly when it comes to macronutrition. So today I'm going to actually share with you the main mistakes, so to speak, that people do with macro tracking, if it fit your macros, whatever you want to call it, so that you can put your best foot forward and do your nutrition journey properly. Let class commence now. So the first mistake that people make is that they eat anything and everything as long as their calories are hit. Now, it's not if it fits your calories, it's if it fits your macros. And even then, I'm not a big fan of using that phrase. But the point is that you can't just be kind of tracking your macros, but only focusing on calories. This leads to poor macro balance, which in turn will lead to poor nutrition balance because you won't have a good grasp about how your nutrition is as a whole, okay? You won't know if you're eating mostly nutritious foods, if you're eating enough of the certain type of foods that you need to be eating. There's a lot of issues that can arise from this. So please don't just eat anything and everything as long as you hit your calories, okay? That's not the right way to do it. And this leads into the second thing that people do that's a mistake is not having a good macro balance or a macro distribution, as I like to call it. And this can stem from the previous point, or it can just be from people not knowing what macros they should be consuming, or just not caring about the range of macros, just kind of arbitrarily kind of focusing on different macros, focusing on an arbitrary number, not really having any clarity and no singularity of focus when it comes to what they're trying to achieve. So we're talking issues such as, low protein, okay? Sometimes, a lot of times people will not be eating enough protein even though they're tracking macros. Next thing could be like fat, okay? They might be eating too much fat where it's not really needed, or they could be eating too low because fat has a threshold where you can't eat under it. Otherwise it can impact your health and your hormones and your cell growth. Perhaps some people are only consuming 2 macros. Now this is not a right or wrong thing. Sometimes people will just be on things like keto diets where the calories from carbs will be virtually nil. But overall, for most people, it's really done in a way where they think they need to cut out a certain food group, and therefore one of the macros is compromised and they only track the other 2. Now keep in mind, when I'm starting out with someone, I won't always get them to track necessarily meticulously every single macro. I'll usually start with calories and protein and fiber, even though fiber is part of carbs, but you get my point. But it's just about recognizing that you can't still be avoiding a whole kind of food group without any kind of reason. That's what I'm trying to get at here. And then you got to consider with macro distribution, the whole purpose is that yes, calories are king at the end of the day, but macros make sure your diet is not only balanced, but you can optimize it for certain extra goals, such as perhaps performance. And performance will be implicated if you're not tracking macros properly and you're not hitting the right targets that you should be eating, such as, for example, carbs if you're doing a lot of strenuous long distance running or something like that. The third mistake that people make, and this kind of still leads on from those first 2 points, as you can see, it's a lot of connection there, is that people don't focus on having a whole food approach. They don't focus on what I call the 80-20 rule, which I use with every single one of my clients, where 80% of the time you should be eating nutritious whole foods so you can make sure you're as healthy and as efficient as you can be. And then 20%, up to 20% can be for, your fun foods and the favorite foods that you want to kind of treat yourself to, but you have to have a balance. Essentially, there has to be a balance between quantity and quality, okay? Not just one or the other. The next thing is planning, or more specifically, a lack of planning, okay? One of the mistakes that people make when they start tracking their macros is they don't plan, okay? They get their numbers, but they don't actually plan out how they're gonna hit those numbers. They don't start meal prepping. They don't start meal planning at the start of the week. All these things can derail you, make it harder on yourself. Now, it's not to say if you don't plan, you can't succeed. You can. And some people who don't really need to plan, they'll still succeed. But more often than not, I find that planning, especially in the initial stages, helps you so much when it comes to develop that mindset and the right strategies and the right behaviors when it comes to macro tracking and doing it properly. I always say if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. And for a lot of people, when it comes to flexible nutrition, this rings true. And ultimately, a lack of planning can lead to a lack of adherence, which in turn will lead to either a lack of results or a lack of clarity around the interpretation of your results and the interpretation of the progress you are making. i.e., you can't make kind of sound, justified decisions unless you have the right data and clarity of focus around that. Now, the fifth thing is a big one. This is something I've noticed even in recent times, is that the biggest mistake, one of the biggest, is that people guesstimate instead of measure, okay? Especially if you're starting out, you need to be measuring. You can't be guesstimating. Guesstimating should be reserved for when you don't have a choice, such as when you're having a meal out and you're not really sure what the macros are and the calories are, or when perhaps you're just taking a little break from it and you just need that time to kind of just use a more intuitive approach to it. But for most people and for most situations where you can measure, please do. Especially at the start when you want to develop that awareness before you can be more kind of lax or flexible with the way you kind of measure. But especially when you're starting out, like I said, don't guesstimate, measure. Because at the end of the day, humans are not good measuring tools, okay? You ask me to portion out 200 grams of yogurt without kind of worrying about the scale, I'll give you 300, okay? It's just the reality of it. And you need to calibrate your skills on an ongoing basis. So you need to develop that skills before you even think about using more guesstimation in your kind of toolbox, so to speak. Hope that makes sense, but yeah, please don't guesstimate too much, measure where you can. Now, this next one is a mistake that people make. It's not usually crucial, like a really detrimental, mistake when they're first starting out. But if you're just tracking mindlessly and you're not really thinking about your actual food intake, this can actually impact you later on. Let me explain. When you just track, but with zero awareness, this is what happens. Your intuitive kind of eating kind of skills are not developed as efficiently. Therefore, later on, when you want to be a bit more relaxed, for lack of a better word, with your tracking, you won't have the necessary skills to still be within the calories you need to be, to still get the results. So you'll be kind of confined to having to use measuring tools on an ongoing basis. And essentially, it will lead you to still eat mindlessly to a degree. Because yes, you're tracking, you know what numbers you have to hit, you're making sure you're hitting those numbers. But if you're not really proactively thinking about your food and what's actually, visually what it looks like, how it makes you feel, what kind of the different alternatives are, all this type of things. If you're not thinking about those things, you will be impacted. So please, if you can, please do just think more about your food when you're tracking. It doesn't have to be every single meal, every single snack you track. But more often than not, try and think more in depth in terms of what you're actually eating. Now, the seventh and last thing that I want to share today is the lack of sustainability that comes around this macro tracking. You got to understand the following. It takes effort. It takes time. It takes patience. It takes commitment. And it takes self-awareness. So ask yourself, with that in mind, is this approach right for you? Okay, are you actually equipped for macro tracking? Not everyone is. I can promise you that with macro tracking and the right guidance, the right coach, all that sort of things, when things fall into place, you can get great results. But you got to ask yourself, is this tool, because that's really all it is, it's a tool, it's a strategy, is that able to get you the results you want long term? Can you actually sustain what you're doing long term? Because a lot of people don't ask themselves that question. They maybe tick off all the other things, but they don't ask themselves, how long can I actually do this? Or if I got the right things in place to enable me to actually effectively start this so I can make it a sustainable lifestyle? Because really, macro tracking should not be a temporary diet. It should be a lifestyle change. For myself and my clients, what we do is we establish it as our lifestyle, okay? We live it. Of course, we don't let it dictate our lives, but it's part of us, okay? We use it to help us improve our nutrition, to live our best lives. But if you don't have that hashtag sustainability factor around you when it comes to this, you won't be as successful. Or your results just will kind of plateau eventually and you won't move anywhere from there. Or you'll get results and then you'll lose them. Okay, one of these scenarios may occur, so please ask yourself before you start macro tracking, 1, can I actually do it? Or 2, even, do I have the right guidance and right tools around me so I can start it properly and actually make it a lifestyle? Because even if you could in yourself do macro tracking, if you are not kind of establishing the right lifestyle and the right environment, around you, you're more likely to kind of think it's too hard and give up. When perhaps if you just had a push in the right direction and the right tip here and there, you may actually have developed a lifestyle around macro tracking. So it's something to think about. I've talked a lot about this point just then. So rewind if you have to watch it again to really grasp what I'm trying to say here. But really, at the end of the day, macro tracking should be a lifestyle that you sustain for some time to come. So now you know what not to do when it comes to macro tracking. So go ahead, go out there and start tracking your macros properly and avoid the things I've shared with you today. And drop a comment below, okay? Drop a comment below. Let me know what your biggest nutrition fear is, okay? Especially when it comes to macro tracking. What is that fear that kind of is keeping you back or making you do things the wrong way? and I'll reach out and help you. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, please leave a comment below, or you can send me an email at theclimbingdietitian@gmail.com. And I want to ask you, do you want help with your macro plan? Want to achieve more with counting macros and counting calories? Simply looking to transition your nutrition to a lifestyle change so you can do it the right way? Well, I want you to apply for my one-on-one nutrition coaching experience, okay? It's where I work with you one-on-one, okay? You people get great results with this. It's called the Flexible Macro, and it's where I will guide you personally, okay? I will give you all that you need, the right guidance, the accountability, so you can get from here to here, okay? And succeed more and achieve the goals you're trying to achieve. So click in the description, there's a link there to apply for what's called a nutrition audition call. It's a free chat where we hop on the phone, okay, see if you're the right fit for the program, and it gets you started. As always, if this video has been helpful, please hit the like button, okay? Just hit it hard. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Stay classy. I'll see you next time. Have a good one.